Welcome back to Past and Present, where we revisit the cultural moments, habits, and trends that shaped entire generations. Today, we're diving into a fascinating and sometimes shocking subject. Things that were completely normal in the 1980s but are considered illegal, dangerous, or downright unthinkable today. It's a reminder of how quickly society, laws, and attitudes can change within just a few decades. Let's step into the time machine and head back to the neon lights, cassette tapes, and booming malls of the 1980s. On the surface, it feels like a carefree decade. Kids on bikes until sundown, arcades packed with teenagers, music blasting from boomboxes. But look a little closer and you'll notice behaviors, products, and social norms that would be completely outlawed today. The first big one is smoking. In the 1980s, smoking wasn't just common, it was everywhere. People lit up in offices, restaurants, airplanes, even hospitals. Imagine sitting on a long-haul flight where the person next to you is chain smoking the entire time. Today, the idea seems absurd, and smoking bans are strict across the world. But back then, cigarette companies were still running flashy ads, often using celebrities, cartoon mascots, and even sports sponsorships to normalize smoking. Many kids grew up inhaling secondhand smoke daily without anyone thinking twice. It wasn't until the late 80s and early 90s that serious restrictions began rolling in. Speaking of airplanes, let's talk about air travel security. If you've flown in recent decades, you know how intense airport security can be. ID checks, bag scans, liquid bans, body scanners. But in the 1980s, flying was almost casual. You could show up at the gate minutes before departure, and in some places, even friends and family could walk you right up to the boarding area. Carrying sharp objects, large bottles of liquid, or even pocket knives wasn't unusual. Today, most of those items would be confiscated instantly, and walking into a restricted area without a ticket would get you arrested. Back then, it was all about speed and convenience rather than security. Another shocker from the 1980s is child safety, or rather the lack of it. Car seats were technically available, but very few parents actually used them. Kids often rode in the front seat, on laps, or even in the back of pickup trucks without seatbelts. It was normal to pile a whole group of children into one car, with no restraints whatsoever. Playground equipment was also far riskier than what we see today. Metal slides that could burn your skin in summer, monkey bars over hard concrete, and spinning rides with no safety features. Parents weren't careless, it's just that safety standards hadn't yet caught up to modern awareness. Then there's drinking and driving. Today, it's heavily policed, and rightly so. But in the 1980s, drunk driving was often brushed off as just part of life. Campaigns like Friends Don't Let Friends Drive Drunk were only just starting to gain traction. In many places, the legal blood alcohol limits were higher and enforcement was weaker. People would leave bars or house parties and get behind the wheel without much fear of being stopped. Looking back, it's clear how dangerous this was and how many lives were lost before laws and attitudes finally shifted. Let's move into the workplace. Imagine this. In many offices of the 1980s, sexual harassment wasn't even clearly defined by law. Jokes, comments, and behaviors that would absolutely trigger HR investigations today were dismissed back then as harmless fun, or boys being boys. It wasn't until the late 80s and early 90s that lawsuits and legislation began shaping stricter protections for employees. In some industries, especially entertainment and advertising, the atmosphere was openly inappropriate by modern standards. Another workplace-related issue was safety gear, or the lack of it. Construction sites, factories, and labs often had far fewer protective regulations. Workers might handle asbestos, lead-based paint, or other toxic chemicals without proper masks or ventilation. At the time, awareness of long-term health risks wasn't mainstream, and industries often pushed back against stricter laws. Today, those substances are tightly regulated, and failing to provide protective gear could land a company in serious legal trouble. Now, let's talk about advertising to children. In the 1980s, marketing to kids was at its peak. Saturday morning cartoons were practically giant commercials for toys. Cereal companies stuffed their boxes with toys and mascots designed to hook kids young. Cigarette companies even tried to market in ways that appealed to youth, like Joe Camel. Nowadays, there are strict laws in many countries against directly advertising certain products to children, especially junk food, tobacco, and alcohol. But in the 80s, it was a free-for-all, and corporations made billions. Speaking of junk food, Here's another surprise: school lunches. In many schools during the 1980s, vending machines sold soda, candy, and chips with no restrictions. Students could load up on sugar and caffeine throughout the day. Smoking areas for high school students even existed in some places. Imagine a designated smoking corner at school. Today, you'd never see that. Health and nutrition policies have changed dramatically, banning those practices and reshaping how schools handle food and wellness. Let's not forget driving laws. In many countries, the minimum drinking age or driving age was lower in the 1980s. Seatbelt laws were often not enforced, and helmets for motorcyclists or bicyclists weren't mandatory everywhere. The sight of a teenager speeding down the highway without a seatbelt wasn't unusual. Today, penalties for those actions can be steep, but at the time, people considered it normal. Another one is corporal punishment in schools. In the 1980s, it was still legal in many places for teachers to physically discipline students, whether through spanking, paddling, or other methods. Today, that would be considered abuse in most countries, and schools can face severe consequences. Back then, though, it was widely accepted, even by many parents. On a lighter but still telling note, let's consider technology. Home computers and video game consoles were emerging, but data privacy laws? Almost non-existent. Companies could collect and use information without the oversight we expect today. Renting a movie at your local video store, nobody thought twice about your rental history being shared. Compare that to today's debates over online data protection, where privacy laws like GDPR are headline news. One more fascinating example is drinking in public. In many cities during the 1980s, open container laws either didn't exist or weren't enforced. People could casually walk around with alcohol at concerts, beaches, or even on the street. Nowadays, that's heavily regulated in most places, with fines for breaking the rules. So, what do all these examples tell us? The 1980s were not that long ago, but the cultural gap feels massive. What was once considered normal daily life, smoking indoors, kids roaming free without safety gear, advertising straight to children, is now tightly controlled by laws and social expectations. It's a reminder that culture is always evolving, and behaviours we take for granted today may be seen as shocking by future generations. As we look back, it's easy to laugh at the absurdity of some of these things, but it's also sobering to realise how many lives were put at risk before laws caught up. The 1980s were fun, colourful and carefree, but also reckless by today's standards. So here's the big question for you. What things do you think we do today that will be considered illegal or outrageous 30 or 40 years from now? Will it be something about technology, the environment, or maybe the way we eat and travel? Leave your thoughts in the comments below, because the best part of this channel is hearing your perspectives and memories. Thanks for taking this nostalgic journey with me on past and present. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you don't miss the next episode. Until then, stay curious, stay reflective, and I'll see you in the next video.